InfraWorks 360 for architects. So why do architects need this tool? Well, a lot of architects design public buildings and public spaces, and they need to communicate that to all the stakeholders, the communities, and the planners, what the impact of that design is going to be within the context of a city. So if we look at the 360 model builder here, we can use this tool when you start up InfraWorks 360 to actually capture site data to build up a city context. So this is a quick workflow showing how that would look. So we'll start off in America. We can pick our country, zoom into, say, Sydney, and we're going to start off with the Sydney CBD and just draw a rectangle around the zone that we want to capture. Give it a name, and then finish it creating the model. And then typically what this will do is it will send you an email later once it's actually pulled the data from the cloud, and then you can open it up in your InfraWorks 360, download that model that's captured all the data, save it to your network, and it should only take about 15 minutes to do everything from go to O. And then open up that model once it's completed, and what you'll see here is it's captured a lot of information with regards to roads, aerial imagery, information on the water area, and some information on the bridge. The harbour bridge in the Opera House isn't quite right, but this is a good basis for starting your city context. There are third-party companies which can build up context for you. This is what we've done with this particular model. But there are various ways where you can grab data from other sources, like you can bring in your Rivet models, Sketchup, 3ds Max Design, Bentley models, and you can start to build up certain components using the in-product tools inside of InfraWorks. So if we look at a road design here, we can simply draw an interstate. This is the Kaho Expressway, and then we can use some of the tools inside of InfraWorks to start customizing that design of the road. So we've got some barriers here with the spray paint on them. We can also bring in some vehicles, and then we can use some of the spacing tools and spacing offsets to adjust them to run on this dual motorway that we have here. We can also bring in numerous vehicles. It doesn't have to be just one. We can bring in some buses. If they're positioned 90 degrees, we can rotate them. We can give them much larger spacings, and again offset them so they're running both forwards and backwards in those double driving lanes. And then finally, we just don't want to have just one green car or one bus. We can add maybe a dark green Jeep Cherokee here, and we can give it different types of spacings and offset them a little bit. You can see here there's a bit of tailgating going on, so we can just drop it back a little bit. And now we have our conceptual ramp flyover. So when we go back to our model, and we can go to our properties and update or flip over to another property. We just did the default one to start with. We then have our motorway. There are thousands of models out there on Google 3D Warehouse. So these are SketchUp file formats. There are hundreds for Sydney, and you can download this for free. So this is a great way to start building up the context of your model. You can even get an A380 Airbus. What I recommend is using tools that you get in the suite just to tidy them up before you bring them in. So you can check them all, make sure the textures are right, and then save them out as a DAE file. This is a Collider file, and you can bring this in, and it comes in pretty much nice and clean. You can preview it. In this case, this one wasn't modeled quite right, but you can bring it in, and then hopefully not crash it in the harbour. But you can bring it in at the default level, then edit it and move it away from the city towers onto the standard flight path that most planes have when they're coming into Sydney. And then finally, I just want to touch on the Rivet workflows. So in this case, you know, if you're designing a tower in Sydney, it needs to be pretty sharp, has to be quite prestigious. It's going to be, you know, part of an iconic city front. So we're going to do this conceptual adaptive component model where we're doing a curved facade, and we've got this adaptive component that adapts to the shape that we've modeled in Rivet. A lightweight model, doesn't have to have a huge amount of detail. We're just looking at it from a planning perspective. We can go and choose a building that we want to demolish in the waterfront. Let's get rid of that AMP building, and then go to our data sources and navigate to our Navisworks model, which was saved out in this case as an FBX, and we can preview it and do interactive placing. Close and refresh. Now we have a model. Now it's not facing the right way, but we can simply rotate it and scale it to get it to the rough height we want. And now we have our conceptual design placed within context. And then from here we can check things like verified views from several locations around the city to see how it looks in context. And then we can also look at our graphics, where we can look at sun path and shadow studies. So we'll just adjust the graphics here with the field of view, and then go to our sun and sky, and then adjust the time and the date to see how the shadows are going to cast from that design proposal. There's also the ability to look at cloud cover and wind speed and wind direction, and you can speed this up and slow it down as need be. Finally, we've got a great storyboard player inside of this application, which is dead simple to use. You just create snapshots and then link the path together, and you can do fly around animations like this. These aren't rendered, this is just a screen capture of how it looks inside the product. If you want to go further, you can render them out and get sharper quality, but for the sake of this demo, this is pretty good. You can work through design options as well, so we can do one design tower option, and then we can do design proposals where we flick to look at another design proposal from the exact same verified view. We can pick up several views all around the city, so we can instantly see and communicate to others the impact that that building will have on the city skyline. And we can use this tool to do a sort of a theme analysis, where we can do this color overlay to show the buildings that are within certain heights, and we can see here our building is really pushing it at the front there. It's moving well beyond some of the buildings which are dictated by the yellow color. And finally, something that's kind of new here, we're just playing around with the ability to translate data from 3ds Max Design to InfraWorks. So these are the populate people that ship inside of 3ds Max Design. If you export these as a DAE file, just with the standard settings, the data, the animated data within them, will transfer into InfraWorks. Now this isn't a perfect workflow, but when we load in that DAE file and just look at the preview, you'll see that the paths, the people will follow those paths. Now I need to do some bit more work with the textures, but you get the basic principles. So if you want to start animating components within InfraWorks, you can bring in data from other sources, and it's going to read that information. And so we're just rotating and moving the people around, and now we have an animated path inside of InfraWorks. Thank you.